Hi everyone, my name is Chaya. Welcome to my channel. As many of you know, I love Mesoamerican history and making art about the gods and culture. Today I will be talking about the design process for my adaptation of Ehecacozcatl Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl for my fic titled Eternal Sunshine of the Fifth Sun. I'm excited to share all the research and love that went into his design, and I hope you learn a bit more about the cultures of ancient Mexico along the way. Without further ado, let's get started. First things first, let me tell you a little bit about this character and his historical source. Ehecacozcatl Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl was the priest king of the Toltecs, who ruled in the grand city of Toyan. The Toltecs were predecessors to the Aztecs, and their civilization was described to be grand and nearing a utopia during his rule. Topiltzin was known as a wise ruler who brought prosperity to his people, inventing the calendar, introducing the cultivation of cacao, nurturing innovation and the arts, and finally advocating for self-sacrifice instead of human sacrifice. Despite his benevolence, he eventually met his demise through Tezcatlipoca's trickery. Although his name includes Quetzalcoatl, he is not to be confused with the god Quetzalcoatl, who is one of the creator gods and the lord of wind. Instead, Topiltzin was known as an hombre dios, a man god, and these were leaders who served as a representative of a god in a human form. Although the hearts of the man and the god were one, they were ultimately distinct identities. In Eternal Sunshine, I treat Topiltzin much in the same way. He is a human with his heart and motivations aligned with the god Quetzalcoatl, as if the god lives through him, but he still lives his own life and story. Now that we understand a little bit more about Topiltzin, let's dive into his design. We'll start off from the top of his head and work our way down to his cute little toes. Well, really, everything is cute about him, I just love him so much! At the top, we have his beautiful crown. The design is a compilation of 3 historical sources: Moctezuma's quote-unquote headdress, Diego Duran's depiction of Topiltzin, and Moctezuma's historical regalia. I first took inspiration from Moctezuma's headdress, which by the way was not his headdress. Instead, it was used by priests and god impersonators for specific ceremonies. This headdress may have been used to impersonate the god Quetzalcoatl. You may be thinking, god impersonators? Yep, it was an important aspect to Mesoamerican religion. The concept was known as Ixiptla. We'll talk about it more in a separate video. Next, I took inspiration from this rendition of Topiltzin by Diego Duran in Historia de las Indias de la Nueva España, and as you can see, it's very similar to Moctezuma's quote-unquote headdress. Coincidence? I think not! But anyways, I like the idea of these beautiful quetzal feathers adorning his head, with the center feathers being longer than the rest. This source served as the main base for my Topiltzin's crown design. Finally, I decided to take inspiration from Moctezuma's historical regalia by incorporating a turquoise tiara into Topiltzin's crown. Unlike popular belief, the Mexica Tlatoanis, aka rulers, did not wear elaborate headdresses. Instead, they wore diadems decorated with a turquoise mosaic, tied with a lovely red ribbon. The Nahuatl name for these diadems is Xiuhuitzoli. Side note, when I say Mexica, I'm referring to the people you'd known as the Aztec, the lords of Tenochtitlan. I'll explain this more in another future video because it's complicated, but from now on, I'll be referring to the Aztec as the Mexica. Now that we covered the crown, let's move on to his hair. As you can see, I gave my Topiltzin a high ponytail tied with a red ribbon. This is reminiscent of Mexica hairstyles, specifically for the warrior and noble classes. Hairstyling played an important role in symbolizing someone's status and even their life force. In Mexica belief, there existed the concept of tonali, one of the 3 life forces in the human body. The tonali embodied someone's will, intelligence, and character, and it was located in the head. Therefore, one's hair served as a protector of their tonali. After a successful battle, Mexica warriors would take captives by the top tuft of their hair. It was a symbol of surrender. The hair was then cut and kept by the captor as a token of victory. By taking someone's hair, they essentially took their tonali, adding that life force to their own. So keeping your beautiful hair was more than just a fashion statement. I took it a step further by giving my Topiltzin long hair, even though it wasn't necessarily common for that time. This is because I wanted to keep the concept of twin tails in his design, taking inspiration from the two tail feathers of the Quetzal bird. Even though he doesn't have twin tails like my god Quetzalcoatl, Topiltzin's long ponytail splits in two, maintaining a similar look. Finally, with the concept of tonali, I like to see his long hair being a testament to his radiant soul. He is not only a man, but also a god in human form, and his long hair demonstrates that splendor. Next, you'll see these feather ornaments, which are tied to the base of his ponytail. These are known as Quetzalilpiloni. These feather tassels were awarded to warriors after successfully taking captives. In fact, performing great feats in battle and taking captives was how one could ascend in the social hierarchy, from a commoner all the way up to the noble class. As one went up the ranks, they were allowed to wear the Quetzalilpiloni, which symbolized their status. I gave Topiltzin 2, which was pretty common for high-ranking warriors. And you may be thinking, aw, he looks so cute and frail, but he was raised by the legendary warrior Lord Mixcoatl. And much like his father, Ehecacozcatl performed marvelously in battle. He earned his Quetzalilpiloni long before even becoming a Tlatoani. Next up are his earrings. You can see them peeking out from behind his hair, but this is what they look like in full view. These earrings are actually taken from depictions of God Quetzalcoatl in Codex Borbonicus and Codex Terrellano Remensis. You can see they are blue and circle-shaped with red in the center. At the end of the earring is this curved shell ornament, which is called an epcololi. Shell ornaments are very symbolic to God Quetzalcoatl because they represent the wind, and Quetzalcoatl is the Lord of Wind, among other things. However, I did not include the epcololi for Topiltzin. I did this to simplify the design a bit, as the earrings are a bit hard to see in the first place. Moving on to his face, I'd like to talk about his eyes and face paint. For his eyes, I chose a golden yellow color, as is the case for almost all my other designs of Quetzalcoatl. This golden color was commonly used to symbolize radiance. This is why some gods are depicted with golden hair, like Tonatiuh, the sun god. Next up is his face paint. The inspiration goes back to the depiction of God Quetzalcoatl in Codex Borbonicus. I liked the red crescent markings underneath his eyes and adapted them on Topiltzin as red underliner, plus eyeshadow to complete the look. Also, I'm just weak to red eyeshadow and eyeliner. As for the yellow stripe across his face, it was loosely inspired by FGO Kamazatz's face tattoo. I chose it because, quite frankly, it looks sexy. That's it. Now, before we move on, I'd like to give some historical context about body paint in general. From what I've seen in historical art and sources, the Mexica did not use body paint much on a daily life basis. Instead, it was used extensively during war to signify a warrior's rank. It also helped organize warriors by role, depending on the colors and designs they used. Body paint was also used by priests and during special ceremonies to represent different gods. Many times, you can recognize a god just by their body paint alone. I chose to keep Topiltzin's face paint as a constant because he is both man and god. Now onto his necklace. Like his crown, his necklace is made of a turquoise mosaic. To the Mexica, turquoise and jade were the most valued treasures, more so than gold and silver. For this reason, you'll see more of an emphasis on these colors in art and ornamentation. Jade symbolized the rich vegetation that surrounded their world, and turquoise symbolized the waters and the intensity of fire. The Nahuatl word for turquoise is xihuit, which also means year. With Topiltzin being the inventor of the calendar, the turquoise necklace is very fitting. I also love how it contrasts the rich red color of his Tilmatli. Speaking of his Tilmatli, let's talk about that next. The Tilmatli is a traditional cape that was worn by men across Mexica society, with styles varying as you moved up and down the social hierarchy. It was a rectangular cloth that was tied over the right shoulder, with the exception of some rulers and nobles tying it over their left, because they wanted to be extra. For commoners, the Tilmatli was a simple white, made out of rough maguey fiber. It was also shorter than the noblemen's Tilmatli, not going past their knees. They would tie it under their left armpit and over their right shoulder, leaving their two arms free as they worked. And it had to be worn this way. If you wore any fashion item outside of your social class, you'd get clapped. The fashion police did not play around back then. As you went up the ranks, the Tilmatli were made of more finer materials like cotton and decorated with splendid colors and patterns. These Tilmatli were larger too, reaching down to one's ankles. These larger Tilmatli were known as Quactli, and the value of these garments was so great they were even used as a currency. Noblemen were allowed to tie their Tilmatli in the center of their collar and also cover their arms with the garment. In a way, this was to show that to get things done, they only needed their words, others would be the hands. When men would sit, they covered their bodies with their Tilmatli. It was very easy to tell a person's rank by their Tilmatli alone, as each design and color belonged to a specific title and achievement. For my Topiltzin, I went back to Diego Duran's depiction of the figure. I loved the red color and green border, so I quickly incorporated it into my design. In the future, I'd like to refine his Tilmatli by including more meaningful patterns on the cape and border because right now I just slapped on some Clip Studio brushes. Perhaps something involving seashells, which brings us to his next design element, the Ehecacozcatl, also known as the wind amulet. It was created by cross-cutting a conch shell, revealing a beautiful spiral design inside. This spiral design symbolized the wind, which is why seashells and this amulet are so iconic to God Quetzalcoatl himself. You can see Lord Quetzalcoatl donning this amulet across various historical depictions, much so that if you spot a god with this amulet, there's a good chance it's Quetzalcoatl, or his twin brother Xolotl. So naturally, I had to include the Ehecacozcatl into Topiltzin's design. He is the representative of Lord Quetzalcoatl in human form after all. Next, let's take a look at the gold accessories on his arms and thigh. Although gold wasn't as treasured as jade or turquoise, it was still valuable nonetheless as it represented the radiance of the sun. I took inspiration from Moctezuma's historical regalia again by incorporating these gold bands on Topiltzin's forearms, with a touch of precious feathers at the ends. As for the thin gold bands on his right bicep and left thigh, I just added them in because they looked sexy. That's it. Moving on. Now let's talk about his scepter. In Nahuatl, this is called a Topilli, which translates to stick or staff in a literal sense, but figuratively means staff of rulership. You'll note that Topilli and Topiltzin sound very similar, and that is because they share the same root words in Nahuatl and thus have very similar meanings. Topiltzin translates to our beloved prince, divine lord, and in modern Nahuatl can even mean little prince or beloved child. This is so cute! Ah! As such, this Topilli is present in many depictions of Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl and even God Quetzalcoatl. As for the shape of the Topilli, it is reminiscent of a speech scroll. These are symbols used across the codices to depict speech and conversation. With Topiltzin being a Tlatoani, a chief speaker, his words played a vital role in his rulership, and I like how it is reflected in his royal scepter. The black and white spotted pattern is thought to represent the night sky, which is perfect for my Topiltzin because he loves astronomy. And as a professional yapper, he can go on about it for hours. I love this nerd. Next, I'd like to talk about his Jade Bellybutton. At first glance, you might think it's a piercing, but it is his actual belly button. If you try lodging it off or touching it without his permission, he will respond with violence. This concept was inspired by the legend of how he was conceived. According to one of his tales, his father, Lord Mixcoatl, met his match in battle with the beautiful Chimalli. She managed to escape the encounter, but Mixcoatl was love-struck. He eventually found her home and launched the jade stone into her quarters via a dart. When she saw it, she was so mesmerized by the beautiful jade that she swallowed the stone. This is how she got pregnant with Topiltzin. With belly buttons being a connection to our mothers, I thought the jade stone would be a cute reference to how Topiltzin came to be. Right beneath his belly button, we come to see his royal Maxtlatl, also known as a loincloth. Much like the Tilmatli, the Maxtlatl was a garment traditionally worn by men across all of Mexica society, and even Mesoamerica as a whole. Boys were given their first Maxtlatl at around age 13, and from then on, it would become an essential part of their wardrobe. If one did not wear a Maxtlatl, it was seen as uncivilized and barbaric to the Mexica, so even the poorest man had access to a basic Maxtlatl. Commoners wore a simple white Maxtlatl made out of maguey fiber, and as you went up the social hierarchy, Maxtlatls were made of finer materials like cotton. They also became fancier with designs and ornamentations. For my Topiltzin, I chose a turquoise color for his Maxtlatl because of the color's value and meaning. At the end of the cloth, you'll also see this red and white pattern that looks like a stepped fret. This is a common motif seen all throughout Mesoamerican architecture, art, and fashion. The pattern is called the Xicalcoyuqui, and it dates back to Teotihuacan, a civilization far preceding the Mexica themselves. This motif has various complex meanings, but I'll summarize it as it relates to Quetzalcoatl. As the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl embodies the duality of both heaven and earth. He is the one who inspires and uplifts earthly humans to reach the divine, and that is through the eternal cycle of light and darkness. Just as the sun descends into Mictlan and rises in triumph day after day, we descend into our own spiritual darkness, fight our demons, and rise in triumph. And after every cycle, we draw closer to our pure, ideal, and divine self. It's pretty deep. So naturally, I found it necessary to include it somewhere in my Topiltzin's design, as it's a concept he himself preached. Lastly, before y'all freak out about the sudden breeze causing an accident there, I'd like to assure you that the family jewels are all tied neatly in place. There was a specific process to tying the Maxtlatl, even down to how the loop was supposed to look like. This made it a comfy, secure, and fashionable piece of clothing. Moving down to his calf accessories, I decided to keep it simple and draw the main inspiration from Topiltzin's depiction in the Florentine Codex. I like the simple white, accented with red ribbons. All I really did was flare out the fabric so that it displayed more movement as he danced. Yes, he loves dancing and he's amazing at it. These calf accessories are also more than just a fashion item. They help hide the scars that paint his calves. This is the same case with the gold accessories on his forearms. And you might be thinking, what happened to him? Well, a lot of things happened to him, but the biggest thing to note is that Topiltzin is the father of self-sacrifice. He pierced his skin daily with sharp maguey spines, drawing his own lifeblood and offering it to the gods. He advocated for this practice over the practice of human sacrifice. Although that movement caused a great controversy during his time, his status as priest and king left a great legacy for others to follow. He served as a prototype priest for the Mexica priesthood that came afterwards. Next up are his Cactli, which are sandals. The world of Mesoamerica was very warm, so sandals were always the way to go. Although Cactli were a common clothing piece, there were certain rules about their use. Commoners could only use them while on roads, and nobody could wear them inside the palace aside from the king or high-ranking officials. For my Topiltzin, I gave him simple white Cactli with a red ribbon. This is usually the style he is depicted in as God Quetzalcoatl and as Topiltzin. I also wanted the other elements of his design to stand out more. Finally, I'd like to talk about something not shown in this specific art. That is the Chimalli, the shield. The Chimalli was a must-have for any warrior, and a lot of care was put into its creation. Chimalli were decorated from a variety of materials such as wood, cane, fleece, rawhide, and last but not least, feathers. In fact, there were craftsmen known as the Amanteca who dedicated their lives to the art of featherwork. These craftsmen created beautiful designs on the Chimalli, allowing the shield to serve as a coat of arms of sorts. For my Topiltzin, I took inspiration from the Florentine Codex, but directly yoinked the specific design found in the mural painted by Diego Rivera. Gracias, Don Rivera! And with that, we have reached the end of Topiltzin's design. Out of all the Mesoamerican character designs I've done, Topiltzin is the one that is very close to my heart. I still remember when I finished his art and took a step back to view the full completed piece, and all I could think was, he's beautiful. I just adore Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl both as a historical figure and as a character in my story. I'm sad that his image has been twisted upon the arrival of the Spanish, causing so much confusion about Mesoamerican culture and history. To me, Topiltzin will always be a purely indigenous figure. He, nor anyone, has to be white or European to be beautiful, enlightened, and stellar. I hope you found this video helpful, and thank you for sticking around this far. To address the question in the video title, the key to creating authentic pre-Hispanic character design lies in one simple word: research. You gotta hit the books. I think the biggest issue with many quote-unquote Aztec designs is that it's just the same made-up slop built from stereotypes and misconceptions. I'm using this AI image as an example because I don't want to put down any artist. You can see there is a lot of fancy detail present, but it ultimately has no meaning. It's just visual noise. In contrast, as you saw throughout this video, every design piece had a meaning. The patterns, the colors, the materials, they all reveal something about the world and character, and that was only achieved after taking care to understand said world. So to all artists aspiring to dive into pre-Hispanic inspired art, I highly encourage you to take the time to research the history. You'll find an endless amount of inspiration for all of your artistic needs. Before I end this video, I'd like to share various artists I took inspiration from. Their work has been a great resource for me, and I can only hope to follow in their footsteps. First is Daniel Parada. He has made extensive studies on Mesoamerican attire, and I am so grateful for it. My life was saved! He also has a comic titled Zot's Comic, with beautifully detailed art in the world of ancient Mexico. Next is Wilhelm. Once again, you'll find a great library of artistic studies of Mesoamerican culture and attire. I feel like I learn something new with every art he creates. I also recommend Rafael Mena, a fantastic artist who brings the world of Mesoamerica to life with every illustration. His work is so intricate and authentic, I feel like I can just step right into the painting. Finally, I recommend the work of Shi Gu, a comic artist with an ongoing series titled Codex Black. You can immediately see that so much care and research went into the art and story. An incredible work and resource. Do check them out. I'll put a link to their socials in the description below. And that's it. Phew, this was a long one. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and comment your favorite part. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss a single video. There's so many Mesoamerican topics I want to talk about. I can't wait to share more. In the future, I'd also like to talk about the design of my god Quetzalcoatl, so please look forward to it. If there's any particular topic you'd like to learn more about, please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, feel free to follow me on my other socials. I post art on Twitter, occasionally stream on Twitch, and you can also join the community Discord. All links in the description. And with that, I bid my farewell. Hasta luego, amigos. Bye bye!